Now let's go ahead and start implementing our calculate method. So I'm going to go to the original version of the project, and in my input activity, here's the calculate method. So this gets run when I click on the button. And I'm just going to start by copying all of this code. So all of the code for my calculate method, copy. And then I'm going to put this in the main activity for my new project. Let's put it at the bottom here. And it's asking me about bringing these imports along, and I'm going to go ahead and say OK here, even though I'm not going to actually use all of them. So let's look at what this was doing before. So first thing it's doing is it's getting the values of volt text and resistance text from the layout. And this is going to work exactly the same, even though these two edit texts are part of the fragment that I attach to my activity main layout. So the fact that these are actually dynamic doesn't matter as long as they've actually been added to the layout. And then this part here is going to be the same as well. And then this input validation, this is going to be the same. And then this input validation as well. So everything down to here is going to be the same. Then this part is now going to be a little different, because instead of creating an intent to launch a new activity and passing the data in that way, now what I'm going to be doing is replacing the input fragment with the output fragment in my main frame, and then telling the output fragment to display the appropriate values. So let's start with replacing the input fragment with the output fragment. And what I'm going to do for convenience is I'm going to want to do this parse float for volts. So let's go float volts is equal to that. And let's go float ohms is equal to this. So I'm going to want to keep those calculations. And then I'm going to get rid of the rest of this. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to create another transaction on the FragmentManager. So FragmentManager is get support FragmentManager, and fragment transaction is FragmentManager, FragmentManager.begin transaction. And then the code for replacing the input activity, input fragment with the output fragment looks just the same. So create a new instance of the output fragment this time, call transaction.replace the content frame with output, and then commit that transaction. So we'll create a new output fragment. Output is new output fragment, and then transaction.replace r.id.content with output, and finally transaction.commit. So that will swap out the input fragment and replace it with an output fragment. Let's go ahead and take a look at this part. I'm not actually changing the text yet, but let's make sure that swapping the fragments is working. Okay, so I'm going to type 120 volts and 10 ohms and hit calculate. And it swapped out the fragment, but I have no actual text displaying right now. These are just two blank text views. So let's go ahead and put some default text in here just so that we can see them. So here's my fragment output, and I'm going to add a text that says, let's go, amps goes here, and then Alt plus Enter, extract string resource, and I'm going to call this amps text. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. So text is, let's go watts goes here, and then Alt plus Enter, extract string resource. Resource name is going to be watts text. And then let's run it, just so that we can make sure that it's doing the right thing. Okay, so 110 volts, 120 volts, and 10 ohms. Calculate, amps goes here, watts goes there. So we see that it is actually replacing the input fragment with the output fragment. Now the next bit about actually setting this text turns out to have some complications. It's not as easy as just getting the text views and setting the text for reasons that I'll explain, but I'm going to put that in the next video.